Hey guys, this is Pineapple, and this video contains spoilers for the My Hero Academia manga, so if you're an anime only, check back for another video coming soon just for you guys. For those that do know what's going on, you know that Deku has been having visions in his dreams about all the different One For All users in the past. Well, things are sort of getting wild with his quirk, and everything going on made me question something. Can One For All evolve again? I mean, having the will of so many different users who I'm sure had their own quirks and identities inside of one quirk is definitely a complex situation. Could that change anything going on within Deku? In this video, we'll talk about the ways that I think it might, and all of the different things that Deku would have to learn how to do. Learning how to handle all of those things might be difficult for Deku, but thankfully for you guys, this video sponsors are here to help you if there's anything that you want to learn how to do. Skillshare is an online learning community for creators and fans like you, with more than 25,000 classes in editing, design, and more. Having a premium membership gives you unlimited access to all of that, so you can join the classes and communities that are just right for you and your New Year goals. Whether you want to fuel your curiosity, creativity, or even your career, Skillshare is a perfect place to keep you learning and thriving in 2019. A lot of you guys have asked me how I edit my videos, and Skillshare is a really good way to learn all of the different techniques that I use to put these videos together. Just take a few classes in basic animation in Adobe Premiere and After Effects, and you'll definitely recognize some of the techniques that I use myself. Skillshare is super affordable, and an annual membership only costs $10 a month, but my first 500 subscribers that use the link in my description to sign up will get 2 months of Skillshare for free. Join more than 7 million other creators learning all sorts of things with Skillshare. With that said, let's get right into the video. Hit it! This theory and overall discussion is going to take some serious information gathering, but I want to bring it all in and put it together to see if we can really see if the story is heading in the direction of this theory. I can't claim this theory as my own since I've seen tons of people saying similar things to what I've said, so I'm just going to do my best at presenting all of the information having to do with this one, while also adding in the things that I've been questioning and working out on my own. Let's get started. It all started with All For One and his little brother. All For One takes pity on his brother and gives him a quirk that allows him to stockpile power. That quirk fused with the user's secret quirk to pass down quirks, and it became One For All. The components here are fairly important, because this is actually where we start seeing some contention between fans. You see, All For One was already up to no good when he gave his little brother his quirk. We know that All For One is a grand schemer, and he's not afraid to set plans in motion that take years to come to fruition. We're told that he didn't know that his brother had the ability to pass down quirks, but how can we really believe that when All For One has access to literally any quirk ever? All he'd need to do was steal some sort of quirk that gives you information on other people's abilities or even their status as a quirk user. This isn't really that hard to imagine since, again, remember, people with quirks are biologically different from those without. Besides whatever biological differences come from their quirks, we know that the lack of a second joint in the foot means that they'll have a quirk. So who really is to say that All For One didn't have some sort of X-ray quirk or quirk-seeking quirk that allowed him to tell if someone was a quirk user? I mean, All For One's quirk is literally one that allows him to steal quirks from others, and we know that quirks are usually handed down genetically. In rare cases, a child can be born with a quirk that's nothing like the quirks of their parents, and I'd assume that this was the case for All For One. But would it be safe for him to assume that he's the only one that got this mutated quirk? I don't think so, and I definitely think it's possible that All For One gave his little brother the stockpiling quirk, knowing that his brother would go out and seek powerful quirk users to pass their quirk onto. These quirk users would eventually seek out All For One, and he could just defeat them with his overwhelming power and steal their quirks. This isn't very likely, and this theory doesn't really hinge on this being the case, but it's an interesting look into All For One's relationship with the quirk. All For One is definitely linked to the quirk somehow, because he's been hearing his brother's voice in his prison cell, and that only started happening after Deku's visions began. What does this mean? Well, when you really think about it, All For One has to be some kind of user of One For All, like any other user before Deku. I say this because All For One at one point did hold the quirk that made it so that a person could stockpile power. This means that at least some of All For One's energy could have come with the quirk when he passed it over to the first user, and this could easily explain how All For One is linked to the Vestiges. But does that explain why One For All is changing? It doesn't quite explain it, even if all of these assumptions are true. First off, let's question this. Is Deku's quirk changing due to his visions, or is Deku having his visions due to his quirk changing? I think everyone has assumed that the visions are what brought on the change in Deku's quirk, but it could actually be the reverse. One for All's first user tells Deku that he wanted to show him more, but he could only show him about 20%. This matches with the percentage that we know Deku can use the quirk at, and that implies that Deku's connection with these vestiges is getting stronger as he gets more and more accustomed to the higher percentages of One for All. The original One for All user also mentions something called the Quirk Singularity, and he tells us that we've already passed the point of singularity. I think he's referring specifically to One for All the quirk in this instance, and I want to quickly break down what I think that means. You see, quirks are factually getting stronger and stronger as time goes on, and they'll only become more volatile and difficult to use. Remember that quirks are the result of some kind of mutation within the human body, and mutations can be unstable even when they don't give you various superpowers. To me, it sounds like One for All's first user is telling Deku, hey, don't worry so much and keep up the good work. I wanted to help you out more, but I can't really do that because my level of influence is only at 20%. We're past the point where All for One has become too difficult to control, but we'll be helping you out so that you don't lose your way. This is how I actually view these visions. I see them as a helpful force within One for All, and that goes all the way back to the sports festival. The visions first appeared to Deku during his match with Shinso. When Deku is brainwashed by Shinso's quirk, he completely loses control of his body, but he starts to see the vestiges of One for All in front of him, and in that moment, his finger moves and One for All activates, breaking Deku's finger and allowing him to snap out of Shinso's quirk. If I remember correctly, Deku notes how this actually wasn't him, and he questions what's going on. It seems like the vestiges activated One for All for Deku and then moved his finger to allow him to get out of a tough spot. This shows us that the vestiges can have a certain level of control over Deku's movements, or at the very least, the vestiges can control One for All's activation. This is very interesting because the only times where they can do this seems to be when Deku is asleep or otherwise not in control of his body. The vestiges basically reclaimed control of his body from Shinso, and his quirk has been activating while he's in his sleep, leaving a mess all over from where the energy arced around and ran rampant amongst his things. So let's summarize all this and build the final theory behind what could potentially happen as One for All evolves in the future. Keep in mind that everything that we know about One for All has been passed down through the different users and their allies. Our knowledge of the quirk comes from All Might for the most part, and All Might is a pretty unreliable narrator who seems to know less about the quirk than Deku does at this point. So we should form our own opinions and theories on what we've actually seen with our own eyes. Ask yourself, what do the actual events of the story tell us about One for All and Deku's unique experience with it? Well, we know from the story that One for All is a complicated quirk, mixed with the vestiges of multiple users. Even the previous users like All Might and Nana Shimura didn't really understand how it worked, and Deku's experience with the quirk is most likely due to it being the right time. Nana said she had a vision where a man in black told her it wasn't time yet. It probably is time for Deku since he's the main character, but that's neither here nor there. We also know that One for All's vestiges can claim some level of influence over Deku when he's in a lessened state of consciousness, and we've seen that the vestiges seem to be Deku's allies. Apart from the two that we know nothing about, I think that they all look like they'd support Deku in his fight against All for One, and I'm basing that by how they've interacted with him when he was having the visions, and obviously, that's the entire goal of the quirk and them holding it in the first place. Aside from that, many fans have seen an eye in the darkness of a panel in My Hero Chapter 211. Many think that this means that Deku's new dark energy mishap may be some sort of ability he's unlocking or channeling with the help of a previous One for All user, potentially being the source. What don't we know? Well, one of my biggest questions is, how does One for All react when it's given to a person that already has a quirk? Does it meld with their quirk and pass it on like it should? Or is One for All a strange kind of quirk that exists separate from any other quirks and abilities that a user of One for All might have? Horikoshi has gone out of his way to keep this a mystery, since he could have easily given All Might some useless quirk to showcase what this would be like from a very early point in the series. All Might doesn't have a quirk of his own to make him more relatable to Deku, of course, but I also think it's to keep this mystery a mystery until we learn about a One for All user that actually did have a quirk of their own. It's mysterious that we don't know, or at least I can't really think of it off the top of my head, whether or not Nana Shimura had a quirk besides One for All, or what it was. I think it's weird because the main 3 users that we know about were all either quirkless or their status isn't clear. Why is this the case? I think that that's an important question, and I think that this question will be answered eventually as we learn more about the quirk. The fact that this question is tied into the backstories of huge characters like Nana Shimura, All Might, and Deku implies to me that the implications might be fairly big once we finally learn what's going on. So now that the information is gathered, what's my idea for One For All's evolution and Deku's potential future? What's my idea? One For All could potentially stockpile the strength from the different users of the quirk and preserve their powers in order to make it so that the One For All user always has the power to take down evil. Eventually, the quirk will reach a point where evil like All For One can't stand against it anymore, and when that time comes, the current user will blossom into a true hero. If One For All is truly evolving, or if it does in the future, I believe that Deku will eventually be able to tap into the will and memories of the different vestiges within One For All, and with some training, he might be able to use their help within battle. Imagine Deku having access to all of the different quirks and battle senses of the various heroes that have held the quirk. This would literally make Deku the #1 hero and fit into the naming convention behind One For All. Deku being able to tap into the various different fighting styles and moves of the other users of the quirk would make it so that Deku's quirk was literally one quirk for all situations. He technically only has one quirk, but it would make him equipped to deal with any situation. I just did a video about what Deku would be like if he learned martial arts, but how much more dangerous would Deku be if he could switch between 9 different fighting styles and abilities? It'd be like Deku had like a One For All weapon wheel, and he was just toggling between the different users depending on the situation. Maybe one user used the quirk in a very different way, and that way would be good for taking down a certain villain. Why wouldn't the Vestiges want to lend Deku a hand when we've already established that they can be granted some level of control over Deku's movements and quirk output? That's all one of the Vestiges would really need to guide Deku's movements and quirk usage to match one of their styles. And honestly, it would be really cool to see Deku's lightning switching between various colors as he swaps through abilities, sorta like how All Might has yellow lightning and All For One has dark and red lightning. Maybe we'll see some rainbow lightning at some point, symbolizing Deku's ability to tap into the memories and power for all of the One For All users at once. Is this likely? I mean, it could be, and it seems like the story is heading somewhat in that direction, so it'll be interesting to see if this theory pans out. What do you think? Rainbow Lightning Deku? Him allowing the previous users to help him fight like some weird sort of Ultra Instinct? Let me know what you think in the comments section below. This is definitely one of my more comprehensive videos, so I'd appreciate it if you could throw a like my way. If you enjoyed the video, subscribe to see more of my content in the future, and if you really enjoyed it, hit that bell icon to join my league of notifications, a great group of fans that gets notified whenever I upload. Once again, shout out to Skillshare for sponsoring this video, and I'll see you guys later. This is Pineapple, peace.